Right, so what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel in this week's video. Today, as you can tell by the title, I'm taking you through my shoulder workout and the things that I use to maximise my shoulder training and the sort of things that you should be implementing into your training session if you're not already, to help grow your shoulders. Genetically, my shoulders are not my strongest body part, so I've had to put a lot of work into growing them, into making them what they are today, and to making them even better for when I try and get on stage next season. So I'm going to bring you in on what I found useful and what's really helped progress my shoulders to that next step, and will do to the steps further up as well. I've got white and black contrasting. I've got a thermal base layer on underneath my jumper. Been running some errands this morning. It's my rest day. I've done my cardio, my steps, eaten 2 meals and run a few errands. I've literally just got home, edited the training footage as I was eating meal 2. Now I'm about to film me talking through it now for you. Help me do that. Obviously got the helping hand of some caffeine, some Monster Energy. If Monster wanna endorse me, my veins literally bleed Monster at this point, so please. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. Right, so we're starting off with a dumbbell press. The reason I'm showing you a longer version of my sets is firstly to show you I'm taking a higher volume approach. So 5 sets of 10, it is here, progressing up pyramid set, increasing the weight each time until I reach a weight where I struggle to reach that set amount of reps, which is 10 for this. What you'll see, the reason I put them so close together in the transition is the speed of the eccentric does not change. Granted, the concentric is getting a little bit sloppier, less uniform as the weight increases. That is because obviously I'm struggling to put it up more. If I wasn't struggling to push the rep up, I would not be putting the muscle under enough stress and getting enough stimulus in that to elicit any growth. Actually, I only got 4 reps in that 32.5. The 20s were missing. I usually go 20, 22, 25, 27, 30 to my top set, but the 20s were missing, so I jumped up the whole pyramid. But it gives us a foundation to work on, so obviously keeping the eccentric slow, removing. Okay, for shoulder pressing, this is the most important tip I can give you for all lifts, but specifically for your shoulder training, because there are a lot of supporting muscles around the delts that will complement, add to, are agonistic, will help drive your pressing movements and your shoulder and your delt movements, maybe even overtake the delts, so you won't be getting enough stimulus to maximise the growth. Remove the momentum in the changes in direction. So from most particularly this part here, when you're here, do not come into your peak length and bounce out of it, especially if you're someone like me where my shoulder pressing is my weakest movement. So my chest pressing, my rowing, my deadlifts, my squatting, my leg pressing, all those movements are a lot stronger than my dumbbell and my overhead pressing movements, So it would be quite easy for me just so that my pride and my ego are stroked, to bounce out of that hole just so I can get them heavier weights up, because with that I can probably do the 40s higher, even more so for my top set. But coming down in that, not sitting there for ages and compromising the shoulder joint and your shoulder health, but coming into just before the compromising position, just taking the momentum out of it, not pausing for long, just take the momentum out of it and then go, come down, go. So I'm not just bouncing out of the part where I'm going to shoulder press now. I'm using my 2 triceps pressing movements. I've had them at the start of the workout. Just get the heavy lifting done, as you'll see the rest of it is light and controlled. So you'll see that I'm using a dead stop, so the stoppers are stopping and then I'm going. They're stopping and I'm going. I'm not letting go of the machine and taking tension off of my delts. I'm coming down almost like an isometric hold, but it's paused. On the dead stop, this is, like I said before, I really emphasise this, remove momentum. So dead stop, press, come down slowly, because no point dropping it down onto the dead stop, because then you're getting rid of all the eccentric, and as I will continue to say in these videos, you earn most of your gains in the eccentric portion of the movement. Don't just focus on throwing the weight up and dropping the weight down. You give everything to the concentric and fight that losing battle with the eccentric. Do not drop the weight. So you'll see after my top set here, I implemented an intensifier. I'm increasing my volume within the session after my top set. So I've done my top set and I've done a drop set. I've dropped from 80 to 60 to 50. I'm not doing loads of reps, as you can see, but I think I got 7, 6 and 6, what's that, 7, 13, 19 reps, whereas I would have just got a 7 if I stopped on a straight set. This is why intensifiers are a great way to maximise your training and maximise your muscle growth, as you're really tiring out that muscle and really giving everything to that movement before you move on to your next exercise. So I didn't do it for the dumbbells because I knew I was doing another pressing movement. My last pressing movement, I added the intensifier, killed it off, and then as you see me moving on to my third exercise here, there's no more pressing for the rest of the workout. So I've got a superset here, lateral raise into a pronated front raise, supersetted with lateral raises, keeping it nice and light. As you can see, I'm not just throwing it up and dropping it, I'm driving it up, coming in, and as your wrists start to bend, your elbows will flare up, and that will internally rotate your shoulder, which is going to cause injuries and definitely a lot of discomfort in your shoulder. 10 of each. As you see, there's a lot of reps that are going to be accrued during this exercise. Make sure to keep your scapula retracted so that you're not using your back muscles and momentum isn't taking the stress off the delts, and you're not sabotaging your growth, cheating yourself out of that muscle stimulus. As you can see at the end, what I did after my top set is I dropped from the 7.5, which was my top set. I did 4, 5, 6, 7, and on the 5th set, 7.5 kilos. I dropped back to the 4 and just got an extra few reps on the lateral raises. I think it was 15 in total, just to really tire out the muscle. You can see I started to swing at the end, and that is just a sort of technique to get past failure. As I've failed, I've hit mechanical failure, whereas my muscles by themselves can't physically do any more reps. So I use a little bit of momentum to throw it up, but I don't just start flapping like angry birds. I use a little bit of momentum to drive it up, still trying to keep as much tension on the delt as possible, but I hold it more on the way down. So getting some more eccentric load past the point where I cannot concentrically use any more reps. A couple more form tips that I will add to this is by retracting your scapula, you stop the posterior and the back muscles from taking over the movement, but you also want to stop your traps from taking over the movement. So you want to retract your scapula, drop your traps down, and then you want to think about pushing the dumbbells into the floor. So push your elbow straight and your wrists down into the floor. This will push the traps further down, and then you can keep a lot more tension on the medial head of the delt. What you'll find is when you do it this way, you will not be able to come as high as you would if your traps were relaxed and allowed to stay upwards. As from almost this point onwards, you're shrugging it up and you're using your traps as more of a predominant driver of the movement. Do it sideways so you can see another version of it. Scapula retracted, traps dropped, and then wrist pointing into the ground, and then you come up, and you'll find it a lot harder as you're using the medial delt more, which is a lot smaller muscle than the trap, and a lot weaker muscle than the traps. And a little pose at the end to show you that I'm getting shredded, and my delts are still striated and veiny. And that is exercise 3. So exercise 4, we've got rear delt flies. Do not neglect your rear delts. A lot of people think the only way to grow shoulders is heavy pressing. I've done my heavy pressing, and I'm getting an isolation movement and an isolation work into my rear delts. I want that 3D look of the delt. I want to look big from the front and the back on a side on pose. So if you've only trained your front delts, you're going to be big this way to your bicep, and the back of your arm is going to be flat like an island board, which you do not want. Reps are increased on my rear delt movements. 15 reps each set, pyramiding up as always, rather than the standard 10, which I've done on the other 3 exercises. I've shifted my bum a little bit further back on the seat, and I've come assigned a little bit forward, just so that my limbs are taken away from my torso a little bit more, so that my rear delts can really drive that movement, especially in the beginning phases of the movement, before we get into the latter end where the rear delt is shortened and the upper back muscles may take over a little bit. I really want to be stretched out rather than like this, where my back's still stretched, my lats are stretching and not my rear delts. So that's why I've come a bit further forward. And my muscle connection is very important for a movement like this, as if you're just throwing the weight backwards, your traps will take over a lot of the movement, and your upper back muscles also. To isolate this muscle as much as you can, like I said, bringing the limbs away from the torso so that the rear delts can really drive that beginning portion of the movement, really stretch on the end range of the eccentric and spend some time in that lengthened position to really stretch the muscle fibers in the rear delt. As you can see, I'm not using momentum on coming in, pausing and driving out again. And again, you'll see me using a drop set intensifier just to really get the last bit of work out of my rear delts on this exercise, and some posing as well, just to show off my back muscles. As much as you want to isolate the rear delt, some of the back does get pumped from this movement, so show off my back a bit. Talking of showing off my back, here is some cable face pulls. My other rear delt exercise, again using the 15 rep range. Similarly to the rear delt flies, it's imperative that you keep your traps dropped on this movement, as you don't want to be working too much your upper back again when you're doing this. So traps dropped, pulling into your face. Another tip is you don't want to be pulling too much. I know I've got it on the top setting and pulling down. That is a tactic to try and remove the traps. Obviously, as you come to a parallel to a pulling up sort of movement pattern, you are recruiting the traps in the upper back automatically. You can't really drop your traps and pull upwards at the same time. So I'm dropping my traps and pulling down. You don't want to pull down too much. This will recruit your mid back and your lats, your lower portion of your back, whereas we're trying to hit the rear delts here. So although we're pulling down from the beginning, you still want to keep the rope high and pull to the top of your face rather than pulling down towards your neck and chest area, as this will keep the tension on the delts a lot better than it would if you pull downwards. I've also got my elbows elevated a little bit, flared up, just to really try and bring my limbs away from my torso, so that my delts are forced to pull more than they would be if my arms were close to my body, taking tension off the lats and putting more onto the rear delts. Really squeezing in that peak squeeze and really letting my shoulders come forward and my rear delts to really stretch in that length and range, and spending some time in that length and range in my warm-up sets to teach myself almost subconsciously to spend more time there. If I spend less time in that length and range and get used to not doing that, I'm not going to be doing it when the weight's heavier and it's harder. I'm teaching myself to be in that range and drive. So then when I come to my top set, even if I am struggling, I still automatically take that little bit further and spend that little bit more time in a lengthened position. So I'm posing here to finish off. What I haven't shown, because the gym got really busy at this point, I had to train a bit later on this day as I had a few things to do in the morning. I did another lateral raise drop set. So what I did, I started with my heaviest weight. I picked up 12.5s. I did 10 lateral raises, still keeping my elbows and my wrist pushed into the ground, my scapula retracted and my traps dropped. 10 reps, then I dropped to 10 kilos and did 20 reps. I did not get 20 reps all in one go. I think I got like 14, did like a 3-second count and then went again to get the final reps. And I dropped to 7.5 to 30, again, trying to get 30 reps with as little pauses as possible. 5 kilos for 40 reps, and then I went to 3 kilos and did 50 reps. This completely finished off my delts. It's the last exercise I really pushed myself and left nothing in the gym. You'll hear a lot of people say lateral raises build your delts, especially from the front and back view. You want to appear as wide as possible, so it gives an illusion of a slimmer midsection stomach, create that V taper, create that X frame, so you have wide shoulders, comes in, your lats are wide as well, but as they come into a small waist, that's the top half of the V, and obviously from your waist down you want your legs to come out the other bit of the X. You want the X to come down into the V taper and then legs out to finish the X frame. You don't want to be like an upside down triangle, but in this case you don't want to be like a triangle. You want that top half, you want your clavicle width and your shoulders to be wide so that you don't look like you don't train from the waist up. But yeah, I hope you took on board some of these tips I used. I hope you found them useful. Hope you also learned something from this video. That's why I always try to pass on a bit of knowledge, try and teach you at least something, or even if I haven't taught you and you know it already, at least remind you of it. Whereas you might think you would spend more time in length and range, or you might think your eccentrics were slow, but then when you go into your next shoulder session, just to check yourself, did I come down too quickly there? As these things and these cues, the frequency, the volume, the time under tension, the removal of momentum, underlined and exclamation mark, the most important point of the video, just to check that all these things are met. You're not neglecting your rear delts, you're not just pressing, you're doing a bit of everything. You're using those cues like dropping your traps and retracting your scapula, pushing your wrists and elbows into the ground, using those sort of cues to isolate the head of the delt as much as possible, as it is a small muscle group. So your larger muscles are trying to take over if you don't deliberately put things in place to execute it with as much tension on the delts and putting as much stimulus on the delts as a result of that. But that's going to end it for this week. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like as always. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I know I say in every video, but we are growing more and more every video. My last 3 videos have been 1 out of 10s, and hopefully this one follows suit. Hopefully you will continue to enjoy this sort of content, as people have made it known to me that you have been enjoying these talk through style of videos where I can go into a bit more depth and give a greater analysis of the reason why I do these things. And although you can see someone do something, you may not understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So that's what I try and impart as part of these videos. I will catch you next week. I'm out. See you later.